Thank you, everyone, for joining us for another USI Tech Talk. Today we have Jessica Carpenter here from Cortec. Um, Sorry, one second. My notes seem to have disappeared on me. You can't you can't hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I was getting some feedback from my office that wasn't going through. So Jessica Carpenter has been with Cortec for 16 years and specializes in automotive and manufacturing. She works with engineers to provide specifications and solutions for corrosion during manufacturing, protection of critical spares, and the shipping of components. Today, Jessica joins us to talk about the critical spares portion and how Cortec products can help protect your critical spares. Jessica, would you mind kicking us off by letting us know exactly what a critical spare is?
Of course, I'm happy to go over this information with you. So, a critical spare would be a component that's essential for any manufacturing operation. Typically, they have a second set of critical spares anytime that a piece of equipment would have something break, whether it be a motor or, it's any host of things, but they keep a second operational spare in the warehouse in case their equipment goes down. A
And
lot of
why is it?
times, yeah, go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry. Why is it so important to protect those critical spares and other assets stored in like warehouses?
Typically, when the assets are received from the manufacturer, they're placed in the warehouse on a pallet and left there until they're needed, which could be 10 years later. And when they go to get that asset, it could be stored in cardboard. It could have had several cycles of humidity and temperature, which would cause the part to have condensation form. And when in contact with wood or cardboard, would have corrosion on contact and also just in the airspace. Sometimes they're just sitting open air to the warehouse and dirt and debris can collect on them. And they're kind of just like a second thought, and nobody considers the issues that will occur if that component is rusted or isn't hasn't been turned for bearing houses and things like that. And they are in dire need of either derusting it or having to replace it. Um,
It's-
Go
So
ahead.
when you're working with manufacturers, what kind of stuff do you see, like when you go in before the Cortec products are in place? Are there any stories or anything that you can share about like, hey, I went to go use blank, and then this was the result because it wasn't an operational spare.
Yes, we see it all the time. I have one customer who has a whole entire warehouse of rusted parts, and they spend their time derusting it and using a wire wheel to prepare it so that they can use it. We did a write-up on what that cost was of 8 hours of someone working to derust a part at, I don't know, I think it was like $30 an hour versus if they were to use a VCI bag, which would cost $3. So there's a huge benefit in preserving the asset up front versus trying to repair it on the backside.
And and what was the downtime like between when they needed to use the part and then when they were able to use the part? Is that any part of that calculation?
For sure, that happens all the time. I mean, that specific customer, it would have been a couple of days because they had a lot of inventory that they could derust. But during COVID, people realized that the supply and demand was the lead times were so long that they would have to wait, 12 to 18 months to replace a part if it wasn't operational. So this has become more of a concern for large companies to make sure that the assets are protected. It's also a return on investment because if you have to scrap a part that usually is in excess of $100,000, that's a lot of money to be throwing away. So they're realizing the importance of protecting it up front.
And what kind of like upfront protection can Cortec provide?
So we have a whole group of products that could be used for asset protection. It depends on what stage you're in. If the parts are sitting on pallets and completely rusted, we would create a program that would help to de-rust those parts, clean them, and then package them into VCI bags where you could label them to note when they were packaged and create a program to determine how long those can sit on the shelf. And then there's also programs where we could protect assets that are setting outside um, with products that have the UV protection in it. And if that film with UV protection is compromised, we have a second layer of protection on the asset itself.
So let's say I'm a warehouse manager, and let's say I'm new to this position, right? I just took it over, and I'm looking at my parts, and I've got some that are rusted, some that aren't rusted. I want to make sure that I'm putting a program in place where anything new that comes in, like I'm protecting top to bottom. Um, do you guys have like pre-built programs where someone could talk to a salesperson and essentially just take an out of the box solution?
I think that every situation is going to be different based on what the warehouse manager or the company in general, what their expectations are. So a Cortec salesperson could work with a warehouse manager to take an inventory of the assets and consider which ones are replaceable, which ones need to be scrapped, and consider the value of each one and the downtime it would take to replace that asset. And then evaluate what condition they're in, um, if they are stored inside or outside, and then to determine how long those assets need protection. And a lot of times that time frame isn't known because you don't know when one of your components essential for operation will go down, but to come up with a plan on how long you want to protect it for and when to follow up on it to make sure that it's being protected when it comes to the end of the length of time that was initially considered. And then we would determine if it needs cleaned, derusting, and then determine what packaging and liquid rust preventative products would be best for those assets based on whether they're going to be stored inside or outside.
Right. So it really to get a solution like a comprehensive solution, they're going to have to talk to one of the experts and really get someone out there, take a look, have the conversations, and really put a comprehensive plan in place. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what Cortec is here for, is to, we specialize in that every single day. And that's why it would be important for us to be involved with making sure that they're doing things the right way in a timely manner that makes sense for their company. There's also the consideration of internal components like gearboxes and compressors, the internal space that might not have any oil in it or fuel, where the airspace inside of the component needs to be protected, where we can fog different products in there depending on what the asset is to protect internal corrosion as well.
Right. And when it comes down to it, like the cost of like asset protection versus the cost of when you go in and you see, oh, we have to replace a bunch of these parts or clean a bunch of these parts, so we can even try and use them, or even try and clean them so we can store them so they're usable. What's like a good cost comparison between like protection on average versus you know having to replace some of those parts?
Even on the low end of things, that would sit on the shelf in a warehouse, you would consider 5, 10, $15,000 at minimum for some of the components, the generators or compressors that are being used for, I mean, anything, gearboxes, all of those things are a lot of money. And to protect them, it would be around with, if we threw everything at it with derusting, cleaning, using a liquid rust preventative and packaging, you're looking under $30 to protect that asset. So it's pennies compared to what the asset's actually worth.
Yeah, that's a pretty stark comparison. Um, so, as we come kind of close to the end and when we get to our Q&A portion, are there any other, little nuggets of knowledge you want to put out there?
Just that there are opportunities for us to help with not only the recommendations, but we have a group of people that can actually do the warehousing applications as well. We partner with a group that will go in and do all of the work. for the company, and we often do that. We're working with one right now in Ohio. So it's there's a lot of things that we can offer to better the company and make sure that they're not having to throw really expensive assets away.
Wow, I had no idea that you guys like went out and did kind of turnkey work there, where you come and you do the assessment and you do the work on it too. That's it's a
Yep.
really cool process there. Um, all right. I'm going to open up everybody's microphones in just a second here in case anyone has any questions. And let's see, everybody's mics. You should be able to unmute your own now if you'd like. Do we have any questions from the audience for Jessica?
I must have done a really good job explaining.
Looks like we're pretty well covered there. So thank you again, Jessica, for coming out and talking to us about critical spare preservation today, and steps that companies can take to make sure that they're not losing some major assets or causing some unexpected downtime. By having a spare part that they thought might be able to go into service and can't. Thank you everybody for joining us today. If you'd like to talk to someone over at USI about Cortec Solutions, feel free to give us a call at 248-735-7000. We have some experts here that can help you, and if need be, we'll get you guys direct in contact with Cortec and get one of these assessments done. Thank you very much, Jessica.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.